Hi all, welcome back to C++ tutorial on Tute Fulcrum. This session is on class and object in C++ programming language. A class in C++ is the building block that leads to object-oriented programming. It's a user-defined data type which holds its own data members and member functions which can be accessed and used by creating an instance of that class. An object is an instance of a class. That is, we say a class is instantiated by creating an object to it. It's through the object that we access the members of a class. No memory is allocated when a class is defined. Memory is allocated only when an object is created to the class or when you instantiate a class. Let's take an example and understand this. Consider the class of cars. There may be many cars with different names and brand, but all of them will share some common properties, like all of them will have 4 wheels, speed limit, mileage range, etc. So here, car is the class and wheels, speed limit, mileage are their properties. The data member of a class are the data variables and the member functions are the functions used to manipulate these variables, and together these data members and member functions defines the properties and behavior of the objects in a class. In the example of a car that we talked about, the data member will be the speed limit, mileage, etc. and the member functions can be apply brakes, increase speed, etc. So let's write a program and understand this. To begin with, let me show you the syntax of creating or defining a class. Use the keyword class, specify your class name. Enclose the members of your class within curly brackets and terminate the same with a semicolon. Now, when you define the members of your class or when you include the members of a class, we start with specifying the access specifier. The access specifier restricts the accessibility of the data inside your class. How it's restricting we'll see soon. So there are 3 types of access specifier. They are private, public and protected. In this session, we will be discussing about private and public access specifiers. Protected we will discuss when we discuss about inheritance in C++. So access specifiers is going to restrict the accessibility of your data. So how? If the access specifier is private, the accessibility will be only inside the class. And if the specifier is public, the accessibility is inside the class as well as outside the class. Inside as well as outside. So thus, access specifiers pose some restrictions to the accessibility of your data, or you have the ability to hide the data within the class making use of the access specifiers. Or you can say you can encapsulate and abstract the data within a class. So after specifying the access specifier, you can have the data members of the class, that is the variables that we use inside the class, and you can have the member functions of your class which is used to manipulate the data members of the class. So this is how you create or define a class. Now once the class is created, to access the members of your class you need to have an object. So let me show you how to create an object to the class. Specify your class name and then you can specify the object variable name. So if I say obj here, this obj is going to be the object of your class name. So through this object, you can access the members of the class. How we are going to do this? Let's take an example and proceed. So let's create a class. So how do we create? Use the keyword class, specify your class name. So let me use a class name. Let's say Tute Fulcrum is going to be our class name. Now I can enclose the members of my class within these curly brackets. So before specifying the members, I have to specify the access specifier to them. So let me say it as public. To begin with, let's understand first what public is, then we'll move on with the private. So let me first include a data member to the class. So data member is nothing but the variable. So A is a variable. So int A is a data member of my class. Now you cannot initialize the members directly here. You need to make use of functions for the same. Now let me add a member function to this. So let me add a member function which is not returning any entity. So void. Let me call the function as display. So let's say this function is going to display the value of A. So let me initialize the value of A with 10 and let me use a cout statement to print the value. So we have defined our class. Our class name is Tute Fulcrum. It has a data member A which is public and it has a member function also display that is also public. So as said, public means you have the ability to access within the class and outside the class. So now let's see how we are going to access the members of a class. So for this we need to create an object to the class. So I'm going to create the object within the main function. So how do we create an object? You need to specify the class name. So that is Tute Fulcrum and then you can specify an object name. So let me say obj. Obj is an object to my class Tute Fulcrum. So through this object, you will be able to access the members of your class. So this statement is instantiating your class or invoking your class and at this point the memory is allocated. So the variable obj or the object obj is going to have memory but your class Tute Fulcrum as such has no memory associated with it. Now through the object, how do you access the members? Suppose if you are calling the member function display, you have to specify the object name, it's obj here, use a dot operator and specify the member that you are going to access from your class. Here I'm going to invoke the display function. So the display function is displaying the value of A. So this statement is going to give you an output as A equal to 10. If it was the data member that you're trying to access, it would be obj.A. So let's run the code and verify our output. So you could see the output here as expected. It is giving you an output A equal to 10. Now let me show you what change you can observe if I change this access specifier from public to private. So as said, if the access specifier is private, you won't be able to access the members outside of the class. So here the data member as well as the member function is under the tag private, means A and display are private members of your class Tute Fulcrum. So you won't be able to access the same outside of your class. But when I make a statement like obj.display and this is within the main function, something outside of your class. So you are trying to invoke a private member of the class from outside of the class. So this is going to give you an error. Your program is not going to work here because display is a private member of your class and you cannot access them outside of the class. So let's run and see what message we are going to get. So as said, when you run the code, this is throwing an error and you could read the error message here. Error within this context. Void Tute Fulcrum display is private. That means you cannot access the private members outside of the class. So let me make this as public. Now I'm going to change this as public. Now as per this code, the data member A is private but the member function is public. So you can access the display function outside of the class, but A remains private property of your class Tute Fulcrum, so you won't be able to access this outside of the class directly. That is, within the main function, you won't be able to access like obj.a. If you try to do that, you will end up with the same error. So display is now made as public. Now your problem is going to get fixed. If you run the code, you'll get the expected output as a equal to 10. So let's check our output. So now your program works fine because the access specifier for display function is public, means you can access them outside of the class. One more point to add with respect to the access specifier, the default access specifier is private. That is, if you remove this, if you remove the private tag from here, I have not specified any access specifier for the data member A, so this remains private. Now, when we talk about the member function of a class, it's not necessary to give the definition of the member function within the class. You can give them outside of the class. That is, keep the declaration of the display or the member function of the class inside your class, and the definition you can provide outside of the class. That is, I'm going to remove the definition from here, and that's only the declaration part that I'm going to keep. So if this is the case, how you have to define your member function? The syntax for the same is specify the return type of your function, then the class name, use the scope resolution operator. This is referred to as the scope resolution operator. Then specify your function name. So here it's display. Now you can define the body of your function. Let's say A is equal to 10 and we are going to use a printout statement, that is cout, to print the value of A. So this is also a way to handle the member function of your class. So this is about the class and objects in C++ programming language. We'll see more of these with more examples in the coming sessions. So keep watching. Thank you so much. Please do watch, like, share, comment and subscribe. And please don't forget to tap the bell icon. You'll get notified whenever we upload a new videos. Thank you.